Well, welcome. I'm here today with Dragan. He is a coaching colleague across the ocean in Malta. And we've connected over the years. I've been a guest on his podcast. And now we're doing a turnabout, and is a guest for me on this episode, which will go out on, you will most likely be viewing it on my YouTube channel. So welcome.
Oh, great to see you again, Vicky. I mean, it's been some time, and when you said people are going to see it, let me just make myself a little bit more presentable because I usually host in a kind of a more of a voice format, so I'm not really worried
Yeah,
how
I know you and
people.
I always do the audio only. So this is, but you're looking great and
Yes.
prepared
Oh,
today.
thank you. Thank you. It's very hot here. To be honest, I'm dealing with this as well. Vicky, we've lost touch, not actually lost touch, but we didn't chat for quite some time. And we met earlier this year, and for a chat, you were still in Mexico. And now
Yeah.
again, 5 months later, we're back here. And I'm curious where are you at the moment? Like both
Yes.
physically and I would say mentally, spiritual.
Yes, I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, I would love for you to just give a little kind of introduction about who you are to our audience so they know who I'm chatting with today.
Little, you said.
Little, big, whichever you feel inspired to do today.
Um, so I'm Dragan. I am originally from Bulgaria, which is a country in Europe, like Eastern Europe, and but I live in Malta, which is a small country, actually the smallest country in the European Union, 27 by 14 kilometers, so you can imagine. I professionally, what I'm doing at the moment is coaching and training and team coaching and facilitation. I call myself progress partner. So I realize with the years that coaching is one of the things I do. So it's very difficult to call myself coach only because I it's a little bit limiting, and I like the progress because progress can come different ways. But I have long experience working in mental health, not from a clinical perspective, but from managing mental health programs for uh, companies and organizations and doing trainings related to mental health. And I've been coaching 10 years now, uh, but the past 3, 4 years on my own. That's
Awesome.
my thing. And I have various interests. Um, I love being a father. Uh, and I love the sea, but I also love the mountains. So kind of a lot of interests.
Awesome. Awesome. And we've connected on your podcast and done a lot of more focused episodes on different leadership related topics.
Mhm.
So tell people where they can find that when they'd like to
Yes,
check
my
that out.
podcast is called The Lunch Break Coach, and you can find it across all the platforms. I mean, Spotify, Apple. I don't post on YouTube because, as I said, video sometimes it's a bit limiting, and I would like people to just immerse in listening. They're short episodes, like half an hour. And yes, we covered quite a lot of topics. Yeah. So there's plenty of things to hear on
Yeah.
our episodes.
Our
Plus
conversations.
more guests as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes. You had a nice range of guests, nice range of people that you've interviewed. And so and
Going back to the question.
yes, back to the question. So I am back in Nebraska in the USA, and I arrived back 10 days ago, I guess. And uh, I think this transition for me, because I've gone back and forth between Mexico and the US quite a bit the
Hmm.
last 4 years, but this transition is different for me because I was really needing a permanent place to land for a while. I just had began to realize this last year kind of how much energy and how much it had was costing me like in bandwidth to change locations and to kind of remap all of that in my
Mm-hmm.
head. And so I think it was late, maybe in the fall of last year, that I began to think about, I need to do things differently. And I didn't know exactly what that meant. But
Mm-hmm.
as that's evolved, I ended up from the end of January through, mid-June in Merida, Mexico with a friend. And that ended up being a very interesting season because I got salmonella in
Wow.
January in the state of Oaxaca in Mexico when I was traveling. And I really ended up spending from, well, it was literally like the 10th of January when I got sick. And through like mid to the end of April, I had just like this constant like roller coaster of ups and downs of being sick. And so even coming back into the US last week, just like took every ounce of energy and reserve that I had. And so the last
Mm.
10 days I've been moving really slow, but gratefully I feel that spark of life kind of reemerging in me.
Mm-hmm. Mm. When I met you for the first time and you said I live in, I live in the US, but I spent some time in Mexico, I was very like, oh, how nice, envy, and how cool this is because sometimes like we meet in the US and then like in a nice scenery in Mexico. And now when you were talking, a picture that came to my mind is every time when we go somewhere, we have to quickly start adjusting and adapting. And that's not easy because you have to map, as you said, everything
Yes.
around.
You're mapping, where do you get groceries? Where do you buy your coffee? Where's the coffee shop? Your whole community of people, right?
Hmm.
Because every time I went into a new place, I was mapping like, okay, like who are people that I could rely on in, say, an emergency situation to help
Hmm.
me figure out the situations here. And then
Hmm.
you're tapping in, you're meeting everyone new in your life. So you think about starting new relationships takes a lot of energy and
Hmm.
intention.
It does.
And then and then navigating a culture in a second language and a lot of nuances there that I think people romanticize a
Hmm.
travel lifestyle. And there's a lot of things that I really enjoyed about that, but this one particular piece over time really began to deplete me.
Hmm. Hmm. I that's what I'm seeing very often is we like the comfort of our home and our environment because it does not take much of energy to navigate with it. Kind of, when
Yes.
it's just we know where's my coffee shop. I know the people there. I have my social network. Okay, I'm expanding it, but I'm not expanding 10, 20 people at the same time. I'm just getting one or two people when I spend a little bit more energy to build the relationships with with them. And I know if something happens, I know where to reach. Like this is my safety, like a safety net that if I fall, there's someone to hold me there and to have
Exactly.
me. And then you see the trend of like kind of glorifying the nomad style of living, and you go there, you work. But I guess that I'm going to say it, maybe it's also age. It's with age, not because we are
Are you
old,
calling me
but
old, Dragan?
no, no, I'm not as young as I look anymore. But even our abilities to
Yeah.
build new things.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think with probably with age comes wisdom too.
That's what I was about to say. The age, the experience, and the knowledge we have, and the risks we take.
Yeah. And for me, it's also been a journey of learning to come back to myself. I think that was the interesting piece of this kind of 4 years of travel
Hmm.
is the majority of my life was always focused on caretaking for others, being productive in a career where everything was that external focus. And this season of my life, because I was separated geographically from my family, it gave me a chance to really get to know who I was. And it's almost like that cycle of getting to know myself was completed. And then once that was completed, like that piece of the journey or that type of lifestyle, like, well, it no longer was needed in the same way. Whereas during the time period that I was getting to know that inner self of me. Individuation. Are you familiar with that word?
I am familiar.
Yeah, I think that's what this season has been about for me and for my family, is about learning to separate our identities from each other and be clearly, having our own unique identities. So I know that I've done that for myself, where, I'm much more confident in who I am and what the uniquenesses of me are. And I've seen my now adult children, form relationships where in the past they may have been leaning on me a little bit more. And now they had that opportunity, although sometimes that was also difficult to do that, being apart, but they were forming their identity now as adults and kind of learning how to separate that from mom. And so it's been an interesting season.
Mm. I like the season analogy. Even like if people listen to our previous chats, they will see that we talk a lot about seasons. And what's your biggest learning from this season that just, passed and
So this last, well, I think there's a theme from this
mm-hmm.
whole season, the broader season. And that theme was about slowing down and learning to do things from an internal based, like learning to tune in and like, what do I want? Like, what do I want to do? What does that even look like in work and career and friendships? And doing that more from an internal motivation than an external motivation. But to do that, I had to slow down, and not only slow down, but to slow down way more than I would have ever anticipated. And that, I think, culminated in the last 5 months where I was literally like, maybe had the energy to do my client work. And then that was like it. Like I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no more. Um, and I was in this cute little casita at my friend's house where it was right next to the pool. And it was very small, but it had, like, my kitchen was like 5 steps away. And so everything that I needed was within a very close proximity there. And it really was just kind of like this little cocoon of transformation for me, where I could just like be there. There wasn't any demands on me other than my work. And it really was a season of connecting the dots to maybe some of the most deepest questions that I've had in my life. And one of those relates to work. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How interesting. I imagine the place when you were talking about and the sun and the swimming pool and everything being so convenient, and the kind of the energy that you can focus only on what you want. And I'm thinking, is this a luxury, or is this something that most of the people can have at one point in their life? We're not saying you need to be like that forever, but kind of having this time to slow down and grow.
Well, I think from the Western culture perspective, from US based culture, moves so rapidly with such a high expectation of rapid movement that many people are uncomfortable even with going at a moderate pace.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think happens is when we get used to that, we miss a lot of things. You know, if you think about going for a walk, if you walk slowly and you're looking around at the trees and the animals and the squirrels, you see a lot more than if you're driving down that same path on a bicycle, you know, as fast as you can go on the bicycle. You're
Mm-hmm.
missing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the value. And some people, I think, keep busy because they don't want to see what's going on inside of themselves, because sometimes it's not pretty.
Yeah, no one said that it's an easy process. I mean, I think if the caterpillar transitioning to a butterfly, it's not just, it's probably it's a painful experience. We don't know for sure, at least I don't know, but I don't think it is something that, it just happens like that. There's a bit of a pain and suffering.
Did you know that in the middle of that, I call it the messy middle of that cocoon transformation, that the caterpillar turns completely to like goo before it
Yes.
begins reforming into the butterfly?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like goo, um, some for for a good section of the last few months. I felt like goo.
It's you know, now he probably has the experience to self-reflect and see it as a process as well, which I don't think many people have the knowledge or they have the ability to kind of execute that kind of self-awareness. But I'm wondering now, with all the knowledge and self-reflection, what are you going to start doing different within your life, with your job?
Yeah. So that's such a great question. And it goes back to when I began my working career, I kind of fell into the corporate world and corporate work life. And it served me well for a lot of years. But there also wasn't much intentionality on my part of that, you know, earlier in my life. I that was just kind of doing the next thing that landed in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved over to coaching 6 years ago, it's been 6 years and 1 month since I left the corporate world. And that was quite a transition, right? Just to leave that kind of stability of and consistency that that offers, and then move into solo entrepreneurship. I think there's a lot of messaging in the coaching world too, that financially one needs to rely on the corporate world as part of a coaching
Mm-hmm.
structure, coaching business. And so I think I had these two deeply competing things happening inside of me. One was this very deep pull to do work with people on the inner, really deep inner work, really crossing paths a lot with people who've had, you know, challenging upbringings, challenging backgrounds that they're working to resolve, that are probably costing them, like confidence, self-doubt, perfectionism, all some of the things we've talked about on your
Mm-hmm.
podcast. But those are all like signs that there's something deeper going on. And I was over the years pulled deeper and deeper into that deeper work. Like that's where I enjoyed working. And there always seemed to be this conflict with me that, like, there's this idea that I need to stay kind of focused in the corporate structure but yet the work that I was doing on the surface isn't really work that would be easily marketed into the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
So on the surface, while I've done a lot of leadership coaching where been part of people who come in through the door of their work, and once they're in there,
Mm-hmm.
many of them end up wanting to do deeper work. But my focus over time was like, that's really where I'd like to be, like focusing my efforts on. But there was always this conflict between, oh, you've got to do it, you really need to stay like tapped into the corporate structure. So as I was thinking of coming back to Nebraska, settling in, thinking about, what's the next level of my work journey, I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to come back. I'm going to, reconnect with all the old business communities that I was part of. And almost like I was imagining in my mind, kind of going back and plugging into this whole kind of corporate PR structure that I'd been plugged into before. But it's like, as soon as I would imagine that in my mind, there was this huge like resistance. Then I would kind of shut down and be like, and that has been happening
Mm-hmm.
over and over again on some level for the last 6 years. But now I had nothing but time to actually sit and be curious about what was going on there.
I see your point here. Okay, the corporate coaching asks us to really focus on return of investment. It doesn't have a lot of space for deep work in most of the cases. Although, I see sometimes clients coming from the corporate, they want to do deep work, and they do deep work. And but it's not the norm. And now you want to kind of create your own space, at least most of the work you do, to be the work you really want to do.
Exactly. And where I'm really pulled is families who have suffered what I would call complex PTSD, or that complex, where if you think about the parents who maybe have grown up with a lot of challenges from their childhood, and now they brought that forward another generation. And many of these people I cross paths with, they've done lots of different work in therapy. They've tried many, many different avenues to make progress in their life. And it's been limited. They still feel kind of stuck, still kind of handcuffed by these things from the past. And that's where I want to meet people more consistently, is in that stuck space where, and many times that looks like a high achiever, the perfectionistic, where they have all these expectations of what life should be like or what life should have been like. Life hasn't quite measured up, no matter how hard they've tried to do things. And oftentimes life has offered them, real obstacles in the process of doing that are out of their control. So it's almost like we take an unstable childhood and we pile something else on top of it. We're trying to swim to get ahead of that current. And then of course we add children in the mix. Those children become young adults. They've taken forward now some of of course they've been impacted by how they've been raised. And so now how do we support that family in solving or dissolving those generational patterns? And that's what I'm super excited to really be focusing more of my work on.
Sounds quite complex, but maybe rewarding.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Mm. mean, I wish you luck with this because it's another challenge on its own. Now, how to position with this and how to convince the people that they have the space and you can help. Because I think, as you said, not everyone would like to challenge. It's easy not to sometimes. It's
Yeah.
easier.
But there's a segment of people out there who have been continuously seeking answers because they know that they're out there. And I think that's the group of people
Mm-hmm.
that I'm looking to tap into, the ones who know there has to be a different answer out there, but no matter where they've looked at it, they've made limited progress or just bumped up against
Mm-hmm.
obstacles.
Now, when you were talking about all this and the change in the self-discovery, I had an experience recently when I had to kind of rethink my purpose. You know, it happens from time to time. If we believe that
Yeah.
our purpose remains the same, and without checking, it's kind of misleading. But one thing I discovered this time is that my purpose is towards other people, but did not include me.
Mm.
Yes, did not
Tell
include
me
me.
more about
They
that.
did not include my family. And then I kind of I spent some time rethinking it, and I included myself in my purpose. You know, I mean, I clearly state in my message of purpose, or kind of, what guides me, that I'm doing something so I can help other people. Other people benefit from my work, but I'll benefit as well from it, and my family will benefit as well. And that was an interesting discovery because you usually like we say, okay, I would like to help everyone. Okay, how this is going to benefit me? Even if it's like, can I have a content life, or I'm doing this because I would like to fulfill my mission and to feel good, or I want to make some money for me and myself, which is nothing wrong with for me and my family. But very often we don't include ourselves in our purpose. We include what we're going to do for other people.
Well, and when we're not including ourselves in our purpose, it becomes self-sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about where I was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I was more in, I'll call it a savior complex, like, oh, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
save, I'm going to save people, I'm going to save the world. And without me, they're going to, not make it. And I look back now and I see what an arrogant kind of attitude that was. And so I think that has completely shifted now. So when you're talking about service, I think that's one of the key shifts for me, where before I was in kind of that, oh, I'm the savior complex. And now it's really shifted to say, my mission is to take all of the learning and wisdom that I've accumulated from my lifetime of experiences and serve others, share that with others, to help them find joy and freedom, to leave behind the emotional pain and suffering, because there's a lot of suffering in
Mm-hmm.
our world. But I realize now I couldn't have that as a pure motive until I had moved through that myself, to where I can say, and by through, I don't mean that we're ever going to arrive anywhere perfect. I think life is a continual learning journey, but I had to move through some stuff that I thought I was already through. And part of that was even to be able to see the arrogance of my own, thinking
Mm-hmm.
and ways. And, that was just a piece of it. But to be able to come down to this true and genuine heart of service, but a heart of service that also isn't self-sacrificing. It's a heart of service that says, when I share with the world, I also am going to be supported by the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more or less, I mean, where I arrived. You know,
Yeah.
I'm doing this, but I'm doing this so I can help and get supported myself and my family to this. And even like I recently went through this exercise with a client, and he's great and he's doing fantastic, but I'm here to, be great husband and to be great parent and very compassionate leader. And I'm okay. What what is in it for you? What are you going to gain? What are you going to be compensated with? Not financially, but when you're a great husband or a great parent or a great thing, what this brings to you now. So this can bring joy or can, make my life feel incomplete or whatever the reward you're
Yeah.
looking for. Like, when I'm a great leader, it doesn't sound properly, but when I'm a good leader at work, I'll progress, get paid, bring comfortable life to my family and to my team.
Yeah. And I think about where I'm at around, as I was raising my kids, much of that being a single parent, I had a lot of my energy and effort focused into saving them from generational cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always kind of in that rescuing thinking with them, which I now realize also created another like subset of impact, some of it good for them, some of it maybe not so good for them. And as I come back now into living in close proximity with my family again, I'm I've lost the need to rescue anybody, and I just have the strong desire to walk beside people in presence and authenticity. And there's parts of my personality, like the joyful, fun, like jokester, prankster side of me that uh, my family hasn't seen too much of. And so I'm really excited to having kind of have that clarity inside of me in the directions that I'm heading in a lot of areas in my life. It feels like the compass has come into alignment on all levels. I think about my personal life, professional life, emotional, mental, physical. We're working on getting the things back in alignment on the physical. And there's a sweet spot to that. There's a like the hum of a tuning fork.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that tuning fork was humming, and now I've kind of become in tune with that. And maybe I needed to move in tune with that before I could actually fully be of service to the world in my
Mm-hmm.
work.
Yeah, if there was a misalignment, you giving
Yeah.
service will be not bad, but it won't be excellent. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it will take a lot of toll on you.
Yeah. And I think that was the key that also like ended up in this season of, just pure exhaustion and sickness, is realizing that the way I had been going about doing some things was still like depleting my energy.
Mm. Something is kind of triggering my curiosity more and more because even in our industry, we're pushing people. People are pushed to learn new things, constantly like change something. But I'm wondering, in your case, what are the things that you had to unlearn?
Mm. The things that I had to unlearn were those limiting beliefs that were programmed into me so early in childhood. Like just yesterday, I was reflecting on this one. In my childhood, playfulness and joy and just, fun was not a valued quality. In fact, it could more often get you in trouble um, than not.
Mm-hmm.
And so a very subconscious message that I received as a child was it's dangerous to play. And what you can do is you can be busy and you can work and you can try to be productive. That's okay, that's safe, but play isn't safe. So I could see now looking back, like the more I slowed my life down and the more I got to a kind of this really truly more authentic joyful side of me, this protector part of me that wanted me to stay busy and running so that I was safe, um, it would kind of get very aggressive and very like what use a lot of fear tactics, a lot of anxiety tactics. And now as I see, a bigger picture, I can see that these parts of me, we all have parts of us that were formed, early in life, or,
Mm-hmm.
through the whole process of life. But these parts of me were formed before like my conscious memory kicked in. And they were playing very, very defined roles. Ambition is your carrot. You're going to have a lot of ambition, and as long as you're running towards that ambition, then you're safe. But if you slow down too much and want to rest or be joyful and playful, that's dangerous. So we're going to keep you like caught in these cycles of workaholism and chasing after, the next financial level or goal. And so slowing down enough to be able to see those thought patterns and be able to say, okay, I recognize that those aren't true anymore. And those are those subconscious patterns that keep us hooked until we can actually get below them. And it takes some significant work and focus and determination to get below them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you were talking about this, I've reached out to something that I have on my desk. I don't know if you're seeing it.
Life
Called
must be
Life.
lived as play. I love that.
Mm-hmm. I found it on the street and I kept it. And it's from one of the works of Plato. And he said life must be lived as play, playing certain games, making sacrifices, singing and dancing. And I mean, that's really has been there. Even like he says, things need to be infused with joy, creativity,
Yeah.
curiosity. It's not frivolous, but it's still serious and engaging like life. But play is an element of all
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. And people who were raised in secure environments where they had secure attachment figures, they can still develop they still develop some parts. Obviously, everybody develops parts, but people who were raised in insecure environments where there was any uncertainty, instability, which can even be as simple as emotional neglect or emotional instability, those people develop parts that are like 100 times stronger than people who maybe were not raised in those insecure environments. So while for some people it's way easier to connect to that joy and play in life, for other people it is extremely difficult. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those are the people now that I have that heart to serve, that are the people who, have from that earliest days of being a young person, that burden placed upon them that they then consciously grow up thinking was part of them because they've never consciously known life any differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, how we turn from one thing to another.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I mean, limiting beliefs. I think we did work on limiting beliefs, me and
I
you.
think we did an
Yeah,
episode
yeah,
on
we
that.
did a
Well,
very episode.
I'm going to find some of those episodes and I'll link them in the
And
notes
it's
below.
one of my favorite topics actually is mentioning it today to a group of managers that I was working with about, okay, be careful of your limiting beliefs. So one season ended,
Mm.
another one is in front of you.
Yeah, a new
What do you
one.
want to see?
I have to just say, 4 years ago, I was so anxious to get rid of as much of my stuff as possible and pack it away and, you know, head out to the world. And I was just as eager this last 6 months to get back to my stuff and unpack it and um, to be with it. And one of the coolest things, that most supportive things that happened for me in this journey is I was actually delayed leaving Mexico with a complication around my Mexican residency visa. And I had leased an apartment and had, all my family lined up to help me, move my things into it. And I wasn't there. I was stuck in Mexico. And they moved everything in, settled everything into place. And so last week when I arrived, late Saturday night, I was actually, early 1:30 Sunday morning and walked in. I could walk straight to my own bed with my own things around me. And that was such a moment of receiving and, seeing how excited that my family was there was no like unwillingness to help or anything. There was, just eagerness and joy. So that was a really cool note to start my return on. And now I'm in a phase, I really am doing some intentional, I'm not running too fast out of the gate because I really need to rebuild some energy up here. But once that season is done, then I'm going to really be focusing more on building community for these folks who, like me, suffered these things earlier in their life. And I really have a heart after doing 5 years of online coaching work. I really have a heart to be doing some more in-person work.
Mm.
And I don't really know how that's going to look for sure, but I'm super excited to figure that out. So
I can hear you well here. And one thing I notice is that just yeah, at the beginning is a bit weird, but then things just fit,
yeah.
you know. I mean, probably because that kind of interaction is the one that is in kind of embedded, engraved in us,
Mm-hmm.
imprinted. And we are designed for that kind of interaction.
Yeah. And
And
there's a lot of loneliness in the world. And I think about AI, and I think AI is going to have a powerfully positive impact on our world. There's
mhm.
probably with the positive also comes some negative.
Yes.
Um, but I think the one thing that AI will never be able to do is sit in our living room with us, clink a glass, give us a hug. That human connection is
Mhm.
not going to be replicated through AI.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if doesn't like I'm seeing they're trying to give a voice and an image and more human personality to AI, which is really funny. We're trying to build a human,
Yeah.
kind of a new version of a human.
Yeah. Well, my
But
AI is named Hectora, so I have already I have named my chat GPT,
I
but
don't have mine doesn't have name. But today I asked the group of because I was teaching some coaching skills, and I said, okay, try coaching through AI. And they were impressed, but we realized altogether the dryness. It's like it can follow a model and wouldn't even understand us in terms of, okay, I'm changing a season. I just came up from one season to another.
well, that's where so I've been using my chat GPT for a while. But one of the features they've changed inside of ChatGPT is where it actually remembers the threads of the things that you've talked to it about.
Yes.
And that actually has been a really cool support for me. And I teach people in work also to use it, because it is a partner that can spot your blind spots for you, and you feel more open to tell it things that you wouldn't just tell everybody. And so I think there's a powerful place for it.
Did you try to ask ChatGPT to roast you?
I have not asked a
No, try
ChatGPT to
it.
roast me.
Try, like, give me a good roast. I can take anything. Do this and
Mine will
let me
have
know
a
how.
lot of content to do that, to roast me with.
And it's really funny. It comes really nice because it really takes the words sometimes, and that's. But I couldn't stop laughing. It was so funny.
I'm going to do that today. That'll give me a good laugh. Oh, Dragan, this is such a great conversation. Thank you for being with me here and acting as the co-host, questioner, business partner. It's been a fun journey. So thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for trusting me with this. When you messaged me, I was like, "Oh, I would love to." I am not responsible for this show, but I don't mind coming and doing questions with you. So it's lovely. I mean, it's nice to be in the other seat sometimes. So
yeah. And this is really important for me. I wanted to share some of these things that I've discovered, and I wanted to share it in a way where, with someone who had that presence to be able to ask the right questions and move the conversation along. We've certainly developed that rapport through our previous conversations. So until
lovely.
next time.
Yeah, definitely. Now when you're back, we can, go back to our routine, to meeting and recording stuff and even discussing things. So I really look forward to this. Good luck with your settling and rebuilding, restarting the connections around you. It might be exciting. You might see something different than before.
Yeah. I think I already have, which is so cool. So
That's fantastic. And until next time.
Until next time.